Can I just say I expect more applause? More applause. More applause. And you. Grazie, grazie, grazie. Buonasera. This is our final day together, which is very, very sad. I have decided that I would like to stay in Italy for maybe one more week, maybe 2 more weeks, maybe 2 more years. I am delighted for this last session to be joined by 2 amazing people, both of whom have traveled here from Kenya. And that's Nivi and Antony, Nivi Sharma and Antony Kamotho. Please join me up on stage, please. Thank you very much. So this session, ladies and gentlemen, before I get Antony and Nivi to introduce themselves, is about the right funding. Now, any enterprise, any social action project needs resource. And we all have to recognize that money is an important mix in the resource basket to get any idea off the ground, right? Now, choosing what sort of funding is going to be right for you is really, really important. And I think it's a bit of a minefield. You have to really understand what you're getting yourself into. And 2 people here have got very, very kind of mixed experiences of everything from between grants all the way through to taking on loans and potential kind of not just debt, but equity investment too. So I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. First of all, Nivi, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and a bit about your experience, and then we'll come on to Antony.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Nivi Sharma. I'm from Nairobi, Kenya. I started my journey along this path as a social entrepreneur. I started a company called Elimu. It was acquired in 2020, and we were the first to digitize the Kenyan curriculum for primary and literacy. I then, in 2015, before I even exited the organization, I'd moved on from being the CEO of Elimu to joining an organization called BRIC. And you met my brother, Mark Kamau, who presented a bit of the work we did there in education and digital access. Also a for-profit organization. And I remember very clearly, in 2019, I went on a fundraising tour, pre-fundraising tour in Silicon Valley. And there was something about that, about sitting in front of a young man in California who was telling me how to run my business in Africa, that made me think I wanted to step away from tech. And in 2021, I joined the board of a bank, a listed bank in Kenya. And the North Star of shareholder value within that bank made me really question that my career has been so focused on impact. Maybe I should step away from the for-profit space and join the not-for-profit space. So I'm now the CEO of an organization called Bridges to Prosperity, and we build bridges, real trail bridges, footbridges for pedestrians, trying to solve for poverty caused by rural isolation in the world. So really happy to be here and talk about the spectrum of funding that we use for impact.
Thank you so much, Nivi. Antony, tell us a little bit about your journey so far.
Good afternoon. My name is Antony Kamotho from Kenya. I work in the potable water space, and how I got into potable water space is because I grew up in a region that really struggled with groundwater. Our sources of water have very high mineral content, and one of the mineral content that's very high in our groundwater is fluoride. Fluoride in itself is detrimental to the development of bones, and it discolors a lot the teeth. So I come from a region that heavily suffers the effect of high mineral content in the water. So mine was to change that, was to make another generation suffer a little less. So we got into working in that space to invest in water purification systems and to provide clean drinking water to the communities we live in. It's a journey that we wanted to make. Initially, that space was occupied by non-profit organizations, or actually non-government organizations that had served it for many years. And one of those that had been really served that space for many years was the Catholic Church. And what it did, it brought technologies to continually improve the water quality. But while they reserved that space for long, it was never sustainable in that because the finances they brought in were finite and they would do the project, provide clean drinking water, but that was free to the community, but it was tied to the seasons they were in for it for that time. So what informed what I wanted to do? I wanted to do it to do what they achieved, but also to achieve it sustainably because I believed that the community was willing to also spend part of their resources because it was important for them. And so that's how I ended up doing a social enterprise that worked in that space. This has been 10 years, and it's proven over and over that it's sustainable, that we can do it sustainably and affordably over time. So I'm a big proponent of social enterprise in this space.
Okay, but we're here to think about the right funding mix. I'm going to ask the audience, just for a show of hands, would you prefer free money that you never have to pay back, or would you prefer money that you have to pay back? Those that would like free money, put your hands in the air. Those that would like to have money that you have to pay back. Oh, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I understand the reason why most people would like free money. But there is a saying, Antony, right? Nothing in this world is free. So, Antony, I'm going to come to you. Tell me about your experience, please, of grant funding and why instinctively you prefer loans and debt and equity investment.
I have said a little bit of that on my experience of seeing how free money had worked in our space for providing us a free service, and what, in a nutshell, it did to us is to create dependency on the part of the person who provided that grant. So the dependency syndrome that it creates in the community is that nobody thinks why pay if you can get it for free? But then the dependency means that whoever you depended on to get where you are, if they withdrew their support, then you are sunk. So the question was, do we depend on the grant for the short term and then sink out of it, or do we do it in a way that was sustainably with our own resources? So that was the question.
And also there's a kind of an issue of market distortion, right, which
Yes.
we've discussed. My understanding is, for example, in Kenya, the whole publishing industry was completely disrupted, actually, by free books being printed. There used to be a thriving publishing industry. Along came USAID and others and said, these people need free exercise books. The market was swamped with exercise books. The publishing industry was demolished. And then when the aid went, there was no publishing industry. Is that right?
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. But there's a big but, and I'm coming to Nivi right now. So you tell me, right, why have grants been essential for you?
I remember at Elimu, I'd started thinking about digitizing the curriculum of Kenya. And I don't know if anyone here remembers the Akash tablet. I think it was touted as the $20 tablet that would change the world, change education. And, it's all great to have a tablet, but what's on that tablet? Do we have localized curriculum, Kenyan curriculum on that tablet? And I said, that's something I can do in my spare time. And so me and my co-founder, we started an organization called Elimu. Elimu in Swahili means education. And really it was screenshots I made on PowerPoint. And I went and showed, this is what it's going to look like. This is how it's going to change education. I didn't write a line of code. And a rich American company gave me $200,000 in a grant. $200,000 without a product in hand, but a really good pitch of why this, why now, what the product is, who the leaders are behind the product, that we're not taking your money and running with it, but give us a shot. And so $200,000 from a big American organization with a large CSR portfolio. And really, a CSR portfolio in America is a choice between paying taxes or giving money to a 501c3 grant organization. So it wasn't extra money they were pulling out of their budget. So $200,000, and with that, I was able to innovate. There wasn't a market I was distorting, but with that money, I was able to build a product, build a team, build a business, pay taxes, all the fun things about being an entrepreneur. But it was that grant. There was no investor with a good head on his shoulders that would ever have looked at me twice with that little traction at that point in time.
So there you go, Antony. Like, grants have a very specific role. It's not always about market distortion. You're wrong. Where would we be without grant?
Now I come again to what she's done. She's innovated on a product, and she's willing to go into it in the market and earn some revenue out of it to sustain it. So Antony comes in, and I'm granted by USAID free money to develop the same product. Can she sustain what she was doing when I can do it for free?
No, and
that's
the answer is we couldn't. But also, Anthony, you and I are sitting here from a place of from a lot of privilege. The average Kenyan cannot sit on this stage, is not dressed the way we are dressed. The average Kenyan is not able to say, have all these learnings. The average Kenyan could not afford the digital services I was providing. So the spending power, Peter, you reached into your wallet and you showed me this wonderful wallet started by a social enterprise that made it out of old Burberry scraps and fire hoses and so on. But Peter was able to reach into his pocket and say, I love the idea of this, let me pay for this. The parent with a child in school who said, undeniably, this will improve literacy of my child, this will improve their grades. But I don't have anything in that pocket. The spending power isn't there. So we cannot come from a point of privilege and say, well, make a profit and make it sustainable. There isn't the same spending power in Africa to sustain that business. And so that's where grants plug in.
It's a great point, Antony. I think you're going to have to concede it, aren't you? I mean, she's winning this debate. Let me tell you, how many people in the world are investment ready? I mean, a small fraction. So if we push money to investment models, we discount maybe 90% of the world's population from gaining investment.
But this is the place where now we are calling for a change in the model. And why I'm calling the change in the model is so that grants are not necessarily channeled because only on the beginning, but they're channeled on the outcome. Why do I want to channel them on the outcome? Because I want to encourage her to grow that finance model on top of the social model on it, so that she also gets to earn reward on the impact she's creating, so that encourages her to grow the outcome, and then that outcome is where the reward comes in, so that all of us are pulled into the outcome, rather than it being injected always on starting on where she's coming in from, the input side. I'm looking for me to see that the financing is also done on the outcome she's going to attain, so that in so doing, then she doesn't have to be killed by another grant that was given that didn't seek to serve the same purpose.
So in a world where, how many tens of millions of people live on less than $1 a day, we should only be giving grants on the basis of a complex outcomes matrix.
It's a paradigm shift.
Anthony, Kamotho, with all due respect, can I also raise, we're always interrogating the inputs, the outcomes, all the pictures we've seen here today. They said, this is the impact we're going to have. This is the return on investment we'll give our... We're always doing that on the side of the beneficiaries, or the Africans. Are we interrogating with the same care, with the same due diligence about who are these rich Europeans, Americans, the foundations that are giving the grants and the investments? What is their motive? Is the motive impact? Is the motive to sustain the way that they're able to give more grants out? Is the motive that they want to feel good about themselves? What is the motive and the inputs and the outcomes on the money side of things? And to be honest, I get a little bored of saying that, these are the reasons why you should give me the money. But let's change the system. Like, in order to do systems change, not so I can send you pictures of nice smiling Africans and children in, learning and crossing bridges and so on. But in order to change the system of how African governments are able to create an enabling environment for development, we just need to throw some money at the problem.
So boom, right? I think that's it, right? In a system driven by loans, there is no real redistribution of wealth or power. If we're going to see that redistribution of wealth and power, it has to come. It has to flow down without an expectation that it goes back up.
That's why you get what I brought about, the impact-linked reward system. Because what it does, it now puts the resource where it's required most on growing the impact. So what I'm saying is that I'm not altogether agreeing that there's no flow that's supposed to come in that is not returnable, but that flow doesn't flow where it distorts the market. It flows where it encourages the market to go after it as a reward.
Okay, so we don't want to distort the market because the market is God.
And exactly that's why you don't have a flow back from Africa to Europe.
Is there such a thing, Antony, as a functioning free market in your world?
Not purely, but I've seen how bad it comes
So surely we have to distort the market. It's our job to distort the market, to get in there and make sure that the market functions in a way that we want it to.
We're still on an old paradigm on that one. I said, believe we need to shift the paradigm. And that's the same paradigm that we talk of, that profit and purpose don't go together. Could we create one where the profit and the purpose did go together? Because then that's where we are going to have a much more equitable society for the future.
Look, I am an entrepreneur myself, and I understand that actually it's a much more kind of egalitarian relationship, taking debt or kind of equity. Do you never feel, Nivi, as if you're kind of going out and asking rich people for money?
I do, and it feels disgusting, but again, let's interrogate the rich people a little bit. That they didn't become rich from this level playing field and free market. The rich countries are rich because of colonialism and slavery. And now they're saying to Africa, well, this is the level playing field. This is the free market that we should operate within. This is how the free market works. This is how profit and investment works. But, you know, I don't know. I do feel ashamed that we are relying on philanthropy to build infrastructure in Africa. That's not the job of philanthropy. But there is a job of philanthropy to be a part of the systems change that will make us be able to exit out of Africa.
And Antony, there's a question for you here, and I think Nivi's hit the nail on the head. There is nothing about systemic change. There is nothing about systems change in taking a loan from a white man, doing your impact down here, and then giving more money back to the rich white man.
It makes me feel a little better because I'm not creating a dependency syndrome on it. Yeah? So what I'm just doing, I'm returning a favor because then you provided for the resource that really got to us to start it. But what I'm trying to create an interdependent relationship. So whereby we are returning what we borrowed. But in essence, what I'm trying to do is that from what we've done is to create other sustainable systems beneath it. So in this case we've been independent for 60 years.
60 years?
Yes, as a country.
You don't look old enough.
And we have nothing to do. I mean, all the donation we've received, there's little to show for it. So that's why we need a paradigm shift and decide, okay, if it's free, probably we need to stay away from it until we develop a way of how to do it ourselves that really doesn't rely on free donation from us.
Nivi.
Do you sometimes feel you are boiling the ocean by trying to solve for clean water delivery in Kenya? That, you know, and there was a very clever lady called Oria Kolo who said this, a Kenyan lady, and she said, we cannot entrepreneur our ways out of everything. We cannot solve for the problem of sanitation, poverty, and so on by entrepreneurs saying, well, let's roll up our sleeves and we'll take risks and we'll innovate. The foundations, the people with the wealth, the governments, the bilateral agreements, the donors, they also need to take some risks. They also need to change. They also need to innovate in the way that they are delivering funding to organizations. My brother Mark said this yesterday. It's like, we've got this great solution for education, social enterprise. We've got this great solution for alleviation of poverty with, you know, building trail bridges. But someone has to make the big bets. Not the $100,000 here, not the $50,000 here, but the big bets on systems change, because we'll continue boiling the water.
Okay. I'm going to come to you guys in a minute, because I want to hear from you. So start getting your questions ready. And if you're chatting in the back, please just lower it, because we can hear it up here. The point I'm going to make is, have we swapped colonial violence for kind of economic violence? Is this just another form of economic violence? We are, in effect, continuing to rape and pillage poorer countries, but shrouding it in, couching it in the terms of investment. Is this just the same old system done differently, creating the same old results, exploitation, wealth extraction. Come on, Antony.
What we're trying to dismantle in this case. So because we agree on one thing, there's need for resource to change our paradigm. But then it's how the paradigm is shaped that we are working on that we are saying why we keep on getting donation is because we feel that we are unable to give back from our effort and from our enterprise. So in this case, what we are saying is that even if we are going to meet on the table and decide, okay, we want to be partners in it, we really don't want just to be for the flows to come one direction. We want it to be two-way. How do we stop being dependent without us being colonized again?
Well, it's a good question, right? I mean, for me, the rules of the whole game have to change. And it feels as if, we're saying, and quite rightly, that rather than accept other people's charity and philanthropy and asking for more because we don't have enough, we're now almost trying to adopt the rules of the West, right? Or it's all about investment. You can wear your shiny suits, right? And you can go and get money. But actually, that system that has been developed in the West has been proven to fail. We have rising inequality in the West. We have climate change. We have work insecurity. The very system that Africa aspires to use to achieve sustainable development is the very system that has actually failed societies in Europe, in Australia, in North America, right? Maybe?
A really good example earlier today about a small makeup company. And the same way as you grow in your investment, so you start with your friends and family round, you're really mission aligned. Then you get your seed funding. You're selling the social impact. You come to conferences like this and you get venture capitals and you say, this is the impact we're having. You stand up on stage and you wax lyrical about the impact on people, on the environment, on the society. And then we go to private equity funding. Eventually you might go public. And what happens to the mission as you grow in investment? Do you think it grows, or do you think actually most of it, except for a few cases like Patagonia, it really dwindles down? Whereas when we're talking about philanthropic giving, you're starting with the old lady who's putting $20 in her church and say, well, this money will go to Africa. And then you're growing up to family foundations, families who have made lots of money who are saying, we'll give $20,000, $50,000 here and there. And then the more sophisticated institutions who are saying, we want to see systems change. We don't have to see the direct services, but we want to see you watering the roots of the problem of this tree rather than just shining the leaves. And then we go up to bilateral and aid funding, and that's where mission alignment increases. So, that's another big difference between grants and, and investment, is that the mission alignment, does it get watered down or does it get strengthened the bigger the investment is?
Right, we've only got 3 minutes left. Are there any burning contributions, observations, or questions from the audience? We have one over there from Alejandro. Do you want to come up? Come up, run, faster. We've got 2.5 minutes.
Thank you. First of all, I admire your boldness incredibly. And so I'm talking about the type of funding that you want to get. So power is not going to give itself up. They're not just going to resign to all the money and power that they get, however they got it. And now you have to scrap fighting for, there's like the fund, like philanthropic capital, impact investing, and so much resources in other types of funding, right? So don't you think like you're scraping for a small pot, when you can maybe tackle the larger? And yes, you may have give a 20% return to a multi-billionaire, but you are quadrupling the impact of millions of people. And yes, you compromise maybe your mission again, and you have to take that choice, but the impact, like even 50 cents or like for people that live on the $2 a day, you make it $4 a day, and that's massive change. So how do you deal with that trade-off? Because yes, you compromise, but you're accessing much resources.
I think we'll...
That question actually took 3 minutes, so unfortunately we're out of time. No, I'm just joking. Go on.
I think there's always a tendency to look for the low-hanging fruits that, if I solve for this problem, I can make a profit, I can make a return on investment, I can have some impact, I can do all of these things. But sometimes we just need to solve a problem. So the problem my organization solves is rural isolation. That is a root cause of poverty. So let's not try and build 100 bridges this year, 1,000 bridges this year. Let's solve this problem in the world, that no mother should have to wake up and say, should I send my girls to school today? Because if it rains, they might not make it back. I can't even send an email before I've had my first coffee in the morning. So no mother should have to make that decision in the morning. No mother should have to think about how she's going to get to the clinic if she's pregnant. So we need to solve this problem in the world. The governments are not solving it for themselves. There's no monetizable toll we're putting on that bridge to make a profit and turn an investment and return that debt financing, investment financing to an investor. It's got to be solved with philanthropy.
Okay.
We've got to solve it by making advocacy and elevating the problem, creating awareness of it, and making an enabling environment to change the system around infrastructure in rural Africa.
Okay, with the risk of abusing my white male privilege and power as moderator, Antony, we've got 1 minute left, so give us your final thoughts.
There are areas that I feel grant did work well. And in this case, Niva's case is where it worked well, because this is a one-off infrastructure, done, it's gone. The provision of drinking water is not a one-off thing that you set up the infrastructure and walk out. The case in my village, what the church did was to set up a plant, a water plant, and get it going, moving. They invested in one investment. They did $1.5 million, and Coca-Cola was happy about it, and they moved to the next village. What happened 5 years down the line? The equipment was obsolete. It couldn't sustain itself, and it broke down. We were back to where we had come from with a dilapidated system that was so advanced. So what we are saying is that there are cases where grant might need it, but where it needs sustainably being revenues coming in to sustain that, that's where we are saying we need to look at it differently. Because if I had built another system that was requiring them to pay and that was sustaining itself while at it, and Coca-Cola came and built one that was for free water, and they walked out, then it broke. 5 years down the line, I'm out of business already. Out of what was sustaining them. So in this case, that's why I'm saying a lot of then we need to draw lines. What is it that could function without needing additional money coming in, and what needs, so that then we don't kill what would really have sustained it. And the publishing story is the same thing.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Right, so raise your hands for grants. Raise your hands for loans.
Yeah, thank you.
Raise your hands for a revolution to overthrow capitalism. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like you to show your warmth and appreciation for Antony and for Nivi. Aren't they wonderful, wonderful entrepreneurs? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention today. What a wonderful few days we've had in Matera. I'd just like to thank all the sponsors and our wonderful hosts and the team here. Thank you all. I've been Peter Holbrook. Good afternoon.